Hello everyone, my name is Elijah David, minister of the 12th Hour Apostolic Sabbatarian Congregation outside the 12th hour. In the Living Hill, Texas, today is July the 20th, 2013. Or it is the 13th day of Ab 2017. We will start our second service on this 7th-day Sabbath with a song entitled In the Garden. I come to the garden alone, all the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my head, the song of Yah discloses, and he walks with me and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody they gave to me within my heart is ringing. And he walks with me and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. I stay in the garden with him, though the pride around me be falling, but he bids me go through the voice of woe. His voice to me is calling, and he walks with me and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. Four groups of Adventists found in the parable of Matthew 20 and found within the framework of the 12 parabolic hours of the day. John 11:9. Yahshua answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? Okay. Work while you have, it says, if a man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. The sun comes up here on the first hour of the daylight in the morning. Here's the sun coming up. Moses, the children of Israel, coming out of Egypt, starting the 12 parabolic time clock, 1 to 1. You have 12 hours between these two signposts. Start with 1 and end with 1. And between these two signposts you have 12 parabolic hours, or you have 12 full hours of the daylight. Okay. Four groups of the Seventh-day Adventists, and they're found in also in the parable of Matthew 20, and they're also found in the great paradox of the seventh candlestick Laodicea. Okay. So now, the Adventist, 1844. We're going to start with Matthew 20, and we're going to read verse 1. Actually, let's read verse 1 through 8. For the kingdom of the heaven is like unto a man that is an householder. Okay. So it says, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. Okay. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. Okay. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. Okay. Third hour. Let's get over here to our chart down. Early morning hour, the first hour of the daylight, Moses, 1500 BC, coming out of Egypt with the children of Israel in the first hour. You always count forward when you start the hour. The first hour came to an end when we come to number 2. So Moses got the early morning hour to labor in the vineyard with the children of Israel coming out of Egypt. Okay. Now, it says, and then in parable Matthew 20, it says he went out about the third hour. Okay. Here's your third hour right here. The third hour ends right here at the cross to start the fourth hour. Yahshua was hung on the cross at the third hour of the day on a Friday, the 16th day of the first month. On the 6th day of the week, the day before the 7-day Sabbath, Yahshua was hung on a cross in the month of Nisan. Okay. Okay, now, it says right here, when he went out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. Now, we need to find out who this householder is. It says, for the kingdom of the heaven, which is the kingdom of David, here on this earth. That's the reason why we call it the kingdom of the heaven, not the kingdom of heaven, but the kingdom of the heaven, which is here on earth. Now the kingdom of heaven is in heaven, but the kingdom of the heaven is David's kingdom here on this earth. And the householder is Yahshua. He was a householder that went out and called Moses from the burning bush in Horeb. He first called Moses to go down to Egypt. Yahshua. Peter says in Corinthians, that Yahshua was that rock in the cloud. Paul said to the Corinthians that Yahshua was that rock in the cloud that led the children of Israel out of Egypt. So he was a householder. Went and hired Moses and children of Israel, the Son, because he is the author of the Old and New Testament. He is the Word, and Yahweh is manifested in the flesh through his Son. So Yahshua is a householder. Let's do it again. For the kingdom of the heaven is likened unto a man, Yahshua, the Son of Yahweh, that is an householder. Well, he's put into charge of the house of David here on earth, the everlasting kingdom of David, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. Isaiah 5:7 says the vineyard of the Yahweh of hosts is the house of Israel. And when they agree with the laborers for a penny a day, okay, now notice it says plural. When he agreed with the laborers for a penny a day. Now it says that others have commented and said he only agreed with the first group of laborers for a penny a day. No, he's talking about those 5 groups of laborers that he hired at 5 different times. He agreed with all of them for a penny a day, and he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour Okay, here it is, at the cross. Third hour is just one parabolic hour before the cross came to, before the third hour came to his end at the cross. And he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. Now, I was listening to some Adventist ministers on YouTube the other night, Seventh-day Adventist ministers, and they were talking about the marketplace. They were using V.T. Hollis parabolic charts for their background, but they weren't quoting from V.T. Hollis. They were making up their own inventions, but they were getting pretty close. I heard this Adventist minister say, well, the marketplace has to be in the church. And he's right, because V.T. Hollis described it as being in the Seventh-day Adventist church. That's where the marketplace is at. But he didn't understand about the vineyard. Isaiah 5:7 said the vineyard of the Yahweh of hosts is the house of Israel. Now, that's another thing. When you put the prepositional phrase in there, it says, for the vineyard of the Yahshua of hosts is in the vineyard. For the vineyard of the Yahshua. Okay. So you would say, for the vineyard of the Yahshua for his vineyard is in the marketplace, is in the church, in other words. The vineyard is in all the world. In other words, the house of Israel is in all the world. But whenever he called laborers to go to work in the vineyard, they had to first go to work in his church. Okay. And then you go to work outside the vineyard for the Gentiles in the world. But when the call for laborers to work in the vineyard is to work in the house of Israel. They have to convert their brethren first, because the vineyard is always mingled with wheat and tares. You've always got to work the vineyard first, get rid of the tares out of the Adventist church, and get rid of them out of the spiritual Israel in all ages. Have a harvest then of wheat, and then the wheat goes into all the world, harvesting their Gentile brethren outside of the vineyard that are out there in the world. Okay, so he went out about the 9th hour, and he found others standing idle in the 3rd hour, man. Okay, so at the cross, Yahshua went out about the 3rd hour, and he found the disciples standing idle in the marketplace. The Pharisees was running the marketplace, and they wouldn't hire these renegade disciples because they believed in Yahshua. The Pharisees didn't believe in Yahshua, so they wouldn't hire anybody to work with them in the vineyard if they believed in Yahshua. That's why you had people standing idle in the marketplace, because the devil's disciples were in charge of the temple service. That was the Pharisees, and they wouldn't allow any believers in the Yahshua to have any kind of leadership role in the temple. Okay. And when he heard those standing up in the marketplace idle at the 3rd hour, right here at the crowd, Yahshua sent the disciples. He hired them and sent them into his vineyard. What does it say in Matthew 10? Go not unto the way of the Gentiles or the Samaritans, but go ye rather the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The lost sheep of the house of Israel is in the vineyard, is in the confines and within the walls of the Israel. Those outside the walls are Gentiles and Samaritans and so forth. Okay, they're not in the vineyard. That's the reason why Yahshua said go work in the vineyard first. Go work for your brethren. Get those that are lost in the vineyard, and then retrieve them, and then go and get your brethren outside the wall. Okay. So he says, go ye also in the vineyard, which is what I'll give you. And they went their way. Again, he went out about the 6th and 9th hour, and I paid close attention. Here's the 6th hour right here. This is the top of the 6th hour. You see that number 7 right there? 6 right here. An hour before the midnight, before the midday. When the 6th hour is completed, you have straight up midday. And you have the number 7 then begins to start the afternoon. The 7th hour of the day, it starts the afternoon proceeding. of the sun reached its peak here at the top of the 7th hour, and it starts going down, declining. Starts the first hour of the afternoon and evening. Then you have 6 hours between 7 and 1 again. So let's count. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 hours, and then the sun goes down here at the first hour, at the beginning of the first hour of the night. Okay. So about the 6th hour, he went out and hired the first group of Adventists, 1833, the Millerites that was represented by the 6th Church, Philadelphia, Revelation 3:7. They were first-day Adventists. You find them in the parable of Matthew 20, verse 5, and I'll read it to you. It says, again, he went out about the 6th and 9th hour. Okay, 6th hour at 1833, and the 9th hour at 1844, connects the two by the conjunction and, showing that the two groups of laborers, the third group, the Millerites, join the fourth group of the Seventh-day Adventists. I call it the 9th hour. As I stated in my title of this sermon, as I stated earlier, there are 4 groups of Adventists that were called at the 6th hour and the 9th hour, and they were classified as a third group of laborers, the Millerites, called in the parable of Matthew 20, and the Adventists was the fourth group called at the 9th hour. But the Millerites are first-day Adventists. They come from the third group of laborers. The third group of laborers are connected to the fourth group of laborers, and so the Millerites makes the first group of laborers for the Advent, because they have the 2300-day prophecy that's exclusive for the Seventh-day Adventists. First-day Adventists, the third group of laborers, are the one who received that prophecy to announce it, 1833. Meeting its fulfillment, 1844, the 2300 days. Okay, so the third group of laborers, hired by Yahshua, Millerites, 6th Church, Philadelphia, joined the 7th Church, Laodicea, 1844, the 9th group of 9th hour called laborers. At the end of the 9th hour, here you have it right here. William Miller called at the 6th hour. That's the top of the 6th hour. William Miller worked in the 7th, 8th, and 9th parabolic hours between 7 and 10. 10 years, 1833 to 1844. Ellen G. White takes over with another Advent band. 10th parabolic hour begins in 1844. And that's your fourth group of laborers. And so the Seventh-day Adventist represents the second group of Adventists that is called to work in the vineyard in the house of Israel. Not the world. Not the Gentile world. Okay? So, now, here you have it. And so now in the parable of Matthew 20, verse 6, we have a fifth group of laborers called at the end of the 11th hour to start the 12th hour here in 2002-2003. But before we get that far, let's identify the 4 groups of Seventh-day Adventists, starting with the first-day Adventists, the Millerites. They're the first group, 1833. Okay? You have 1833. Your second group of Adventists, 1844, Seventh-day Adventist. You have the third group of Adventists, the Shepherd's Rod, 1930. And that came between 10 and 11, right here, halfway between 10 and 11, parabolically. VTL came in 1930 as the third group of Adventists. 1970, Brother Johnson came as the fourth group of Adventists. 1970, with the Branch Davidian, Seventh-day Adventist at Gilead Center. Okay. Now, I was called to work in 1970 at the beginning of the 11th hour with Brother Johnson. So I worked the whole 11th hour with him between 11 and 12. Okay, I was with the fourth group of Adventists. I was hired since 1833. So let's review that. William Miller, first group, 1833. Seventh-day Adventists, 1844, the second group of Adventists. The Shepherd Rod, 1930, the third group of Adventists, which was called the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist. And the fourth group was the Branch Davidians, called here at the top of the 11th hour, in Burris Johnson Gilead Center, and I was called to work with him, okay, alongside him for 33 years, 1970 to 2003. Now, we have one more group, though, to be called, and that's those that's called in Matthew 20, verse 6. That's that fifth group of laborers. Now, keep in mind, the Adventists called at the 9th hour. There was actually three groups of Seventh-day Adventists that worked between 10 and 12 o'clock. That was the 10th hour, 1844 to 1970, and the 11th hour of 1970 to 2003. Between 10 and 12, we had two parabolic hours at the Adventist work, 1844 to 2003. And I worked in that 11th hour along with Bruce, and now I'm called to succeed the 11th hour workers. And so that's where the parable of Matthew 20 comes in. It says, in about the end of the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing idle, and it saith unto them, Why stand ye here all day idle? Right here at the end of the 11th hour, right here, at the dawning of the 12th hour, he's asking, why are you standing here all day idle? The sun's going down. You've been standing idle all the day long, so to speak. Okay, and he said, well, no man has hired us. Well, the reason why no man has hired us, because the steward of the vineyard was doing the work all by himself, Brother W. Johnson. He said he didn't need no help. He said it was a one-man operation. So Brother W. Johnson carried the responsibility all on his own shoulders for 33 years, from 1970 to 2003. In other words, he let people do his field work, all right enough, by taking literature and that he published out the field. But as far as calling me in to help him in the office with the Office of Inspiration, to help him get the prophecies right, he chose to do it on his own. I was the one that had the inspiration for the prophecies, and Brother Johnson was the one that was in charge of the ship without the inspiration of the prophecy, because he represented the house of Esau. Had the birthright, but he had no inspiration. I didn't have the birthright, but I had the inspiration. I'm typical Jacob. Okay, so I represented the fifth group of laborers, and now to get this one, also the fifth group of Adventists. Now I didn't say Seventh-day Adventists, I said fifth group of Adventists. William Miller, first-day Adventist Sunday keeper, represented the first Adventist group, 1833 to 1844. At 1833 covered three parabolic hours between 7 and 10, 1844 to 1833 to 1844. First group of Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists represented the second group. The Shepherd's Rod represented the third group. Brother Johnson, Gilead Center, Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventists represented the fourth group. And the House of David called here at the end of 2002, 2003, closed out the judgment of death for the Adventist Church. And I had worked out there with the fourth group. And I became the leader of the fifth group of Seventh-day Adventists. Because that fifth group is the 144,000 that comes out of the Adventist Church that joins the House of David. that I'm in charge of now here, and the last group of laborers to work in the vineyard. Now, when my work is over in the vineyard is when the 144,000 comes forth to join the house of David. That's what I'm working for. That's what the house of David is working for at the end of the 12th hour in the judgment of living time. Is to bring forth that harvest of the 144,000 that comes out of the Adventist church. And they represent that fifth group of laborers, the purified section of those first four groups of Adventists. The fourth group of Adventists, with its three classes of workers, Bashan, Carmel, and Gilead, produced the purified house of David, the 144,000, as the fifth group of laborers found in Matthew 20, verse 6. Okay, now, let's go now read about what B.T. Hollis has to say here in the White House Recruiter about these laborers in the vineyard. So he says, I just read it to you, Matthew 20, about the five groups. So now B.T. Hollis is asking the question on page 13 of the White House Recruiter. How can we know for a certainty in which hour we find ourselves? Now, B.T. Hollis in the 10th parabolic hour himself, between 10 and 11, he's working in the 10th hour, and he's asking the question. Because he thinks he's in the 11th hour, and he thinks the 11th hour is the last hour, but you can see the 11th hour is not the last hour, it's next to the last hour. The 12th is the last hour before sundown. But he thinks he's in the 11th, he's actually in the 10th, and so now let's see what he's trying to learn here about asking this question, where it says, how can we know for certainty in which hour we find ourselves? And if we are, and if our own call to service has come, we can know only by the establishing of the time in which the last parabolic hour expires on. Well, the last parabolic hour, according to, as far as the B.T. Hollis was concerned, was the 9th parabolic hour that expired in 1844. William Miller worked that hour. B.T. Hollis in the 10th hour, so he's asking a question. We have to find out when that last hour expired. But he didn't say that that last hour was the 9th hour. See? He says that he had the 11th hour, so he had to be talking about the 10th hour. He wants to know when the 10th hour is going to expire. He said, we have to go and find out when this 10th hour is going to expire. Now, his 10th hour began in 1844, and B.T. Hollis comes along in 1930 in the midst of the 10th hour, between 10 and 11. And he's asking the question now. Well, the fact that he's in the middle of the 10th hour, and he wants to know when the 10th hour is going to expire, well, he can't know because he dies in the midst of the 10th hour. So he would never have the answer. But he's telling his people, and he's telling the Adventists, you've got to know when the last hour expires to know who you are and what hour you're in. So now he's going to go on and try to show where the last hour expired, and with his call, and that he started in the 11th hour, and the last hour he called it. So he says, and to do this, we must first establish the time of the first call for the servants. Then in turn, the time of each successive call, culminating with the last. First, though, pursuant unto this end, we must bring into the focus a parable of significant points. Number one, the householder, as every Bible student knows, is the Yahshua himself. Number two, for the laborers are his servants. This is Yahshua's servants. The disciples were his servants at the cross when he called them. Number three, the penny is a reward. Okay. That's eternal life. That's what the penny represents. And number four, his vineyard is in the place where they are to labor. And number five, the day is parabolical, representing a period of time which is illuminated by some great light. Number six, the period of labor is both preceded and succeeded by a night. Preceded, the night ends right here. And Israel, with Moses and children of Israel coming up out of Egypt, the night is over. Here they're coming out at the first hour of the daylight. And then it is succeeded by the darkness again when the day is over. Here's the day is over. 12th hour is over right here at the going down the sun. And as soon as that sun goes down, it begins the first hour of the darkness again of the night. Here you have it, right here. Okay, so now it says, where it says, let's read that again. It says, for the sixth, for the period of the labor in both, is both preceded and succeeded by a night, else there could be no early and no late part of the day. Number 7, for the householder hires labors at the 5 different times. Okay, and what was that? Early morning, 3rd hour, 6th hour, 9th hour, and the 11th hour. At the end of those hours, though, what I'm trying to say is you have to go to home at the end of the hour, because the end of the hour represents the closing at the end of their day, respectively. So it says, there are, number 8, there are 4 3-hour periods. And, okay, there are 4 3-hour periods. Between 1 and 3, or between 1 and 4, a 3-hour period. 1, 2, 3. Between 4 and 7, a 3-hour period. This is the second 3-hour period. Here it is right here. 4, 5, and 6. And then right here in 1833 at midday. Your third 3-hour period is between 7 and 10. 1833 to 1844. And your fourth 3-hour day is between 10 and 1. Again. 1, the 10th hour, 11th hour, and 12th hour, and then the sun goes down. Start the first hour of the night. So there's your 4 3-hour periods. But it says, in each of the first 3-hour periods, only one group is hired. Okay, between Moses and the children of Israel, there's only one group of Israelites hired to cover that 1,500-year period. The second 3-hour period starts right here at the end of the 3rd hour, Yahshua at the cross, and it ends in 1833 with William Miller. That's your second 3-hour period. That covered an 1,800-year period of time, that second 3 parabolic hours. The third 3 parabolic hours will only cover 10 years of time. And the fourth 3 parabolic hours covers from 1844 until the end of probation at the end of 12 hours, which is just right in front of us. 2 groups of laborers who are hard here in this last 3-hour segment between 10 and 1. Okay. 10, 11, and 12. 3 hours. First 2 groups, the Seventh-day Adventists and the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, are hired between 1844 and 1970. 2 groups. Third group, Burles Johnson, the center hired between 11 and 12. He had the 11th hour. So the Adventists respectively had 2 parabolic hours, the 10th and the 11th, 1844, 2002, 2003. And the last group, which is number 8 here, has the last parabolic hour, which is the house of David, 144,000, and that's for the setting up of Yahweh's everlasting kingdom, which shall never be destroyed up to other people. And the 144,000 come forth, that constitutes the setting up of that everlasting kingdom. That will never be destroyed of Daniel 2, 44 and 45. Now, we having explained that, it says, So it said, and in each of the first 3 periods, only one group is hired. Okay, one group. Those children do the first 3-hour period, the second 3-hour period, the disciples and the reformers. The disciples at the cross, the reformers during the Dark Ages, Martin Luther, Knox, Wesley, and Campbell. Those 4 major Protestant reformers, which represented the Lutheran Church, Presbyterian Church, the Methodist Church, and the Baptist Church. Okay. So William Miller then was the 3rd group of laborers called to start the second 3-hour period between 1833 and 1844. One group was hired. Okay, one group is hired to work in each one of these 3 hours. Until you come to this last 3 hours, and there's 2 groups hired. They're hired in the 7th Dominion and the 8th Dominion. Okay, in the 3 parabolic hours. And they're the 5th group of laborers, the last one, Matthew 20, verse 6. But the 4th group of laborers, the Adventists, is in Matthew 20, verse 5. Okay. So it says, number 11, the agreement for a penny a day is made only with the first group. Well, we need to rethink that because, as I told you earlier in this reading, that when he went to hire laborers in the vineyard, he hired 5 groups, and he said he agreed with the laborers for a penny a day. All of the 5 groups gets the agreement for a penny a day. Okay, number 12. The other groups shall receive whatsoever is right. Okay. All right, let's just say the first group, Moses, the children of Israel, he agreed with them for a penny a day. Eternal life. Okay, well, so then he made a deal with the rest of them. Whatsoever is right, that's what you'll receive. In other words, if you do your work, all your work I give you to do, and you be accepted of me, you get your sins all blotted out, and don't have any sins on your record, then you have eternal life. You get the same thing as the equivalent to a penny a day that the others got, or the ones at the beginning got. Number 13, at the day's end, all are given the same penny. So it says right there, a penny even though the last worked only an hour. 12th hour, right here between 12 and 1. The 5th group of laborers, Matthew 20, verse 6. Judgment of the living time. See, judgment of the living here is in the 12th hour. The judgment of the dead started in 1844 at the top of the 10th hour and ended in 2002, 2003 at the end of the 11th hour. Okay. So it said, number 13, at the day's end, all are given the same pay, a penny, even though the last worked first. And number 14, the first was paid last, and the last was paid first. Now to find out in which hour we are told, go ye also, we must here at the outset of this go to work study, determine where in the time that the parable begins and where it ends. To gain this following knowledge is simply to reckon with the sequentially amplifying facts that the parabolical night, which preceded the parabolical day, must necessarily be the period before the spiritual light of the world. For the scriptures came up into the view before the light. And when it says, for the Bible came up before the light of scriptures, the written word of the Elohim began to shine. Okay, let's read that again. I think I messed up there. For the gaining of this vital knowledge is simply for the reckoning with the sequentially amplifying fact that with the parabolical night, which is preceded by the parabolical day, must necessarily be the period before the spiritual light of the world, the Bible came up, before the light of the scriptures, or the written word the Elohim began to, when the written word the Elohim began to shine forth into the hearts of the men. But back there it must be remembered that the will of the Elohim was transmitted not by the Bible, really ordered from Father to Son, just as the light of the sun at the night is transmitted by the earth to the earth by the moon, rather than directly by the sun itself. For this reason, it has come to be regarded as a time of the oral tradition. Really, the day of the labor obviously represents the period in which the light of the world, the Scriptures itself, lightens man's path. Thus it is that in his parable, the Master, the Yahshua of the Vineyard, regards the Old and New Testament dispensation as the only day period of all the probationary time in which he goes to the marketplace at the 5 consecutive times to hire laborers to work in his vineyard. Finally, the night following the day can only represent the period after the gospel work is finished. The night following the day, starting with the first hour of the night, see, the day, the 12th hour ended here, the last light of the day, probation covers it. Here you have it. Millennium, 1,000 years, darkness over the whole earth. Okay. So it says, after then as the light of the world, the word sinks beyond the horizon of the day, the darkness covers the earth, and gross darkness the people. Isaiah 60 verse 2. Okay, now it is the time which finds the destiny of every being forever fixed. Then follows the Yahshua's irrevocable finality. Now we have a little problem with this statement here. This statement is misleading, and for you all out there in the listening audience, I need to make something clear. B.T. Harlow says when the sun finally goes down and darkness sets in, he said, then as the light of the world, the word Elohim sinks beyond the horizon of the day, darkness covers the earth and gross darkness the people. Prophetically, that's found in Isaiah 60 verse 2. But that's Isaiah 60 verse 2 is not talking about when the sun goes down, when that gross darkness covers the people. And now we're going to go turn to Isaiah 60 and read it for ourselves. Verse 2, and let's place the emphasis before the sun goes down. Spiritual darkness covers the people, and gross darkness covers the earth spiritually here in this 12th parabolic hour. Only the light shines upon those that knows knowledge, and those that have understanding that knows knowledge. The light is shining on them, but those that won't allow present truth or new light to come to them, that rejects it here in this 12th parabolic hour of daylight, then darkness covers them and gross darkness the people. When the world rejects truth that comes to them, and the house of Israel rejects spiritual truth that comes to them in the daylight time, then they enter into gross darkness. Let's go read Isaiah 60 verse 2 now. Well, let's just read starting at verse 1. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Yahshua is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Yahshua shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. Now, he's telling the saints that have come to the first judgment here at the beginning of the 12th hour. He's telling the 144,000 it's time to rise and shine now. Because you've got one parabolic hour to work to gather your brethren. But those of your Adventist brethren that wouldn't accept that new oil, that extra oil put in their lamps that was offered to them during the previous hour, the 11th hour, and the 11th parabolic hour, 1917, those that rejected to get that extra oil, to have it so that they can use it here in the 12th hour, to lighten their path until the sun goes down at the first hour of the night. we're in Isaiah 60 is talking about arise and shine here at the beginning of the 12th parabolic hour starts with judgment of the living. This is a prophecy for that. And I'm going to read that again what Isaiah has to say. Finally, the night following the day can only represent the period after the gospel work is finished. That's true, yeah, the night following the day. But we're not talking about this particular darkness. We're talking about the night that the people that rejects the light here in the 12th hour of the house of Israel, especially the Seventh Day Adventists and the Davidian Seventh Day Adventists, when they reject it, then their light goes out. And let's read that again. For the night following the day. Okay. So now I'll say this. For the spiritual light that follows here in this 12th parabolic hour is for the rejectors of the truth in the house of Israel. So he says, then as the light of the world, the word of Elohim sinks beyond the horizon of their day, total darkness covers the earth, and earth and prophecy is the United States, and that's where this prophecy first opens up to start to work in the 12th hour, it's here in the United States. Jeremiah 23 says justice must be executed here in the earth, United States, first, and then it's executed in the land of Israel, second, and then number 3 in all the world. Now, okay, now, in Isaiah 26:9, let's go read about that. There is a prophecy also that talks about first, you have to judge the house of Israel, bring a harvest out of them, and then you go into the world. So we have a prophecy here in Isaiah 26:9 that says, with my soul have I desired thee in the night, yea, with my spirit within me will I seek thee early. For when thy judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness. So when my judgments are in the United States, then the inhabitants of the world outside the United States will learn righteousness. So judgments are falling right now in the United States, and Yahweh is using antitypical Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Obama, that is sitting in the seat of Nebuchadnezzar today, to come into the land of Israel, the new earth, and the United States and probably come from the old country. He came from another country, like Nebuchadnezzar did when he came down to Judah to vex it and take away the children of Judah for a 70-year captivity. He took them back north to Babylon, to his home. Well, this is where Obama come from. He come from Babylon. He come into our shores. He's come here to he's after the house of David, the tribe of Judah, the lawgiver. That's who he's after. This house that I'm representing here. Okay. So he says, Isaiah 26:9, let's read again. He says, for when thy judgments are in the earth, United States, the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness. The United States is only a part of the world. Okay? But when the judgment starts in the United States, then all the righteous, that are called to be righteous, are going to see it, and they're going to learn righteousness. Or all the good people, I'm saying. They're going to learn righteousness. And where are they going to learn that at? How are they going to learn that? Where are they going to go to learn that at? Well, the only place that's left for them to go at this time to learn righteousness is found in Isaiah 2. Let's go read that. And it says that the word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem, and it shall come to pass in the last days. The last days are in the 12th parabolic hour. The last years are between 1844 and 2003. The latter days, Ezekiel 38 bears that out. Ezekiel 38 bears out last days and latter years, latter days. Last days and the latter years. Latter years from 1844 to 2003. The last days is from 2003 to the end of the day. And the sun goes down and millennium starts. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Yahweh, Yahshua's house, not the sun, shall be established in the top of the mountain, all churches, and shall be exalted above the hills, all small churches and organizations around the world, and all nations shall flow unto it. All nations now are going to flow unto it. Why? Why are all nations going to flow onto this righteous kingdom now of David? Because all the wicked nations have been destroyed. There's no more wicked nations anymore. They've all been destroyed. And so if you want a parable on that, we'll go to our prophecy, you go to Isaiah 60 verse 12, where we just left a little bit ago. Back to Isaiah 2 verse 3. And many people shall go and say, Come ye and let us go up to the mountain of the Yahweh, unto the house of the Elohim of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways. And we will walk in his paths, for out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. Okay. O house of Jacob. The house of Jacob is the house of David that it's talking about here. Come ye and let us walk in the light of the Yahshua. Okay. Now, if that's not enough, we'll go to a double witness here, Micah, chapter 4. And he's talking about the same event. It says, but in the last days, between here we're in now, starting in 2002, the last days begin in 2002, or you might say at the 9/11 Twin Tower meltdown in New York, when the government pulled off that hoax, inside work, starting the time of trouble like there was since it was a nation, starting at the very beginning of the 12th parabolic hour also with us. That's when that Michael 12:1, so Michael stands up to deliver the saints. There shall be a time of trouble like there was since it was a nation. But whenever those bombs blew up those the New York Trade Centers, those Twin Towers, that began the time of trouble. That's when Michael stood up. And that's when he started the judgment of the living with Ezekiel 9, investigating judgment. That's when he started going to the Adventist church, putting a mark upon those that are sign, company, abomination, and that was 144,000. It's a 7-year sealing period, it's a 7-year marking period, setting them aside. And now they have already been set up as an organized government that haven't been disclosed to you yet, but they're there. And when they're disclosed to you, that means that they'll be clothed in the armor of, clad in the armor of the gospel. And they'll be ready then to go meet that image of the beast, and typical Goliath, and to defeat him in a literal confrontation. Two great armies. Army of heaven, shod with the gospel of salvation, the truth, and the armies of this earth, shod only with their own armor that they manufactured themselves and placed upon their own bodies. The armor we have was created by heaven, and Yahshua personally placed them upon his army. He dressed it himself with that house from heaven. That's 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1 through 5. They became clothed upon with that house from heaven, with the armament of heaven. Okay, so now it says, Micah says, but in the last days it shall come to pass at the mountain of the house of the Yahweh. That little mountain of the stone hewn out of Mount God's hands, the house of David, hewn out of the Adventist church, grows into a mountain of the fills the whole earth. That's what Micah is talking about here. It says, the mountain of the house of the Yahweh shall be established in the top of the mountain. So that little stone grows into a mountain, and it's going to be established on top of all the religious organizations. and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow under it. And many nations shall come and say, Come and let us go up unto the mountain of the Yahshua, and unto the house of the Elohim of Jacob, that's the house of David, and he will teach us of his ways. Who will teach us of his ways? Whoever's in charge of the house of David is going to teach him of his ways. Didn't David teach him of his ways back then? Wrote 150 books of the Psalms. Didn't David, after he overcame and got forgiveness of all of his sin, and walked perfectly before the Yahweh from then on, then he taught the ways of salvation. And we will walk in his paths, for the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Yahweh from Jerusalem. So who is now opening up this here gospel in these last days? And typically Elijah David. Okay. And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations to fall, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift their sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. How is this? Because all the wicked nations have been destroyed by this Lamb, Yahshua, that came down with his army of 144,000, and it talks about that in Jeremiah 51. We don't have time to deal with that in this study, but we're getting close to the end of our study now. Let's get ready now to bring this study to a close. And but I want to finish reading right here in Micah 4. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain which is of the house of the Yahshua, which is the house of David, shall be established on top of all the mountains worldwide. It shall be exalted above the hills. Okay. And so we know that the house of David is the house of Judah, the lawgiver. And it says in that last great battle of Armageddon there in Zechariah 14, verse 14, it says Judah, the house of David, is going to also fight at Jerusalem when that battle is carried from the United States, Texas here, at the New Jerusalem, when it's carried from here to the Old Jerusalem in Israel. Says Judah is going to also go over there. The house of David is going to fight at Jerusalem there. Open my eyes that I may see. Open my eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me. Place in my hands a wonderful key that shall unclasp and set me free. Silently now I wait for thee, ready my Yah, thy will to see. Open my eyes, illumine me, Spirit divine. Open my ears that I may hear voices of truth thou sendest clear, and while the waves fall on my ear, everything false will disappear. Silently now I wait for thee, ready my Yah, I will to see. Open my ears, illumine me, Spirit divine. Open my mouth and let me bear gladly the warm truth everywhere. Open my heart and let me prepare love with the children thus to share. Silently now I wait for thee, ready my Yah, thy will to see. Open my heart,